Hey there guys, Bets here, again with another patch rundown for patch 5.11 this time. We're going to get right into it. I want to go through these really quick. I know I always say I want to keep these brief, but I'm going to really try to stick to it this time, so I'm going to get started right away. Aatrox, his Bloodwell passive, is slightly stronger at level 6, 11, and 16. And what this does is it still keeps him a little bit on his toes early on because of how long the cooldown is at level 1. So he can't make any... Well, he still can make those really aggressive tower dive plays, especially in like lane swap scenarios and competitive play. He can still do those, but he's gonna have that really long cooldown early on, so he's gonna be at risk of counter jungling and aggressive play from the enemy team. But as time goes on, like late game team fights, he's gonna have a stronger passive. It's gonna be up more often, so he can play more aggressive more often. I actually really like that, especially with the changes to his ultimate past. Maybe I think it was in patch 5.6. He's going to be in a better spot. He's still going to be a little weak, especially with the fact the tanks are in the top lane. They're just more useful in general. Like Maokai is just still really good. Hecarim just does more damage. He might be used by like players like Freddy122. I think that's his name, of SK Gaming in the EU LCS. But besides that, I don't see him play too much. In solo queue, I think he'll be played a little bit more. I think he's okay now. Played as slightly more tanky. He can be a decent initiator and damage soak with a little bit of damage in there. We'll see though. Ashe got a few nerfs. So I'm just going to go through them really quickly. Recommended items updated. That's just like a change to the way recommended items are. Q, Ranger's Focus, which is her flurry attack. It no longer works on turrets. So the stacking I think still like maintains what it was at before when you attack a turret, but you can no longer use that extra damage on a turret to burn it down. So I think that's fine. It was a little overboard. The damage itself was good on champions, but I think the turret damage was a little too high, especially with what else she brought to the kit. Her volley damage has been nerfed at early levels. Since the buff to the early cooldowns of volley, it's fairly strong. The damage isn't that huge early on because you still have that base damage from your AD. I think it's a 1-to-1 scaling ratio on total AD. But this will hurt her early laning phase, which is fine. I think she needs a little bit of a weakness. She has that mobility weakness, but everything else about her is really good right now. Trading, scouting with Hawkshot, initiation, CC, all that good stuff, damage. So that's a little bit weaker now, so which is fine in my opinion. Her E, Hawkshot, the vision radius while traveling is reduced significantly, 1500 to 1000, and the end destination radius is still going to be the same, quite large. But the reason for this, I think, is because of things that you can do with Hawkshot when you're playing Ashe. So let's say you are an AD carry, and let's say you're blue side and you're pushing up, and you're around here. You see where this A and S is? Hope you guys can see this. You go there and you hit your Hawkshot from here all the way through the enemy jungle, and you're able to hit almost every camp. Maybe not wolves unless you... Here, let's delete that. You can go from maybe, let's say here. So the tower is right here. Go from here, go all the way across, and you won't see them forever, but you'll see which camps are up or not, where the enemy jungler is oftentimes, and it's really difficult as an enemy jungler to deal with that. And it doesn't cost her any mana. It's really frustrating, and I think that this is a good change. It won't completely remove that ability, but it will make it slightly weaker and more manageable, which I think is fine. The thing is, Ashe isn't going to be changed in any way viability-wise. She's going to be a little weaker in lane early on, but she's still going to be strong in terms of late game damage. She's going to have that weakness of lack of mobility, but I don't think this is going to put her in a spot where she won't be played ever. She's just going to be a little bit more equal to other AD carries, which I think is fine. Another change is to Brand and his ultimate. This is a very simple change, but a very good change to Brand players. And the reason for that is because like scenarios like this. Let's say you're about to ult someone very low, and they either Zhonya's or they die to another source. Your ult is completely useless in that case and disappears. Now it changes targets to someone else I think it's the nearest target. It will seek out a different target rather than just fizzling out. So it isn't very clear exactly who will seek out. Maybe it's the closest target, closest enemy champion. But this allows it to at least keep going and do the damage that you want it to do. It might not be on the target you want it to do it on, but it'll still be present, which I think is a really good change to Brand. It won't change his competitive viability, I don't think. He just doesn't have enough damage overall. His range isn't that great. Overall, he has a few weaknesses. His solo queue viability will be better for sure, though. It isn't a massive change, but it'll really help brands do the damage that they want to do. So I think that's a good change. Caitlyn got a few buffs, mainly to her passive headshot, and now ignores 50% of the target's bonus armor. I think that's mainly to remove that like extreme case where you would do insane amounts of damage with headshot to Baron. It would just ignore that bonus armor that it has. I think that's fine. This will allow her to do more damage late game to tanks. She's still really strong, super late game with like 6 items against tanks, but she still isn't that great. You like need a hyper carry nowadays to get through the tanks that we have. So this will help her a little bit. She already has that early game strength. Weak late game, I mean weak mid game, but this will allow her to be even stronger late game. So that's nice for her. Standardized, so Yordle Snap Traps standardized to 1.1 seconds. I'm not exactly sure because I'm not a Caitlyn player myself, but it sounds like there was a range for how long the arm time was. I don't know if this was based on the level it was, but now it's standardized at 1.1. This will allow setting up with your support certain like plays a little easier maybe. Not a huge difference. I think the headshot change is the biggest difference. The bug fix, this is a bug fix for certain dashes that could pass over the traps without triggering the root. I don't know of any. I don't know if this means flashes, but dashes. Okay, so this will just help her a little bit, allow her to be a little safer, but overall not a huge change. I would have to see it in game though. Ace in the Hole now gives vision at start of cast instead of at a start of channel. So the reason this is good is because oftentimes you would have this scenario. Let's say you're fighting 2v2 against the other AD carry and support with your support, and they would get low enough where you can ult them, but they immediately as you start casting, they get out of vision into Fog of War, and it stops the channel of your ultimate because you no longer have vision. Now it gives you vision at the start of the cast instead of at the start of the channel. So that's immediately then the channel starts. You understand there's like a slight delay. This will make it so you're able to use your ultimate more often in those like very small scenarios. So I think that's good. Allows her to finish off people a little bit more easily. Not a huge change. I think headshot will be the most significant change to her. So we will see how she deals with late game tanks. I think that'll be the most important thing. I think she'll be pretty good. I don't know about competitive viability, unless like let's say Sivir is still really popular, really low range AD carries. Some pro players might start playing her, but solo queue wise, I think she's gonna be quite strong for a time. Yeah, I think she will be for sure, especially since Sivir is fairly popular, and she just has that insane range advantage on people. But we'll see. The next change is to Echo, and I think the reason why people are saying Echo is so strong, and people are trying to struggle with it and discussing it, like exactly what makes him strong, and I don't think he's really that strong right now simply because people don't understand how to play him well, don't know how to build him very well, things like that. They haven't gotten used to him. I do think like just theory-wise, when you look at the numbers and you look at like what he has, he's really strong because of his ultimate, the high AP ratio, the heal gives you, the change in where you are on the map, all that is really strong, and it's no mana cost. Just overall is a really strong ability. Also his W, because of what it gives him and how low of a mana cost it is. It is the definition of a 1.1, where you only put 1 point in it, gives you a decent shield. That's not the greatest. The AP ratio is high, but at 1 point it's not the highest. So it gives you a 2.25 second stun in a huge AoE though if you enter it. And it gives you a really good scouting tool. It's overall really good ability for 30 mana. So they kind of nerfed it in a few scenarios. So the first is the mana cost. This is still a fairly low mana cost, so it's decent, not bad. They remove the vision it gives you immediately at least. So you have to wait 2 seconds. So Scouting wise, it will be a little harder. So if you look at, sorry, one moment. His W is a parallel convergence. There it is. 1600 range. I think that's about the range of Varus Q. I'm not sure, but it's a really long range. Let's just say that. Ezreal, I think, is 1150 range for his Q. So you can just see, compare. It's a massive range, so you can just scout really easily. It's very safe. Now, it's a little harder to do that. You have to wait. You don't get instant vision. The detonation zone is now more readable, along with the change to his ultimate, increased visibility of Echo's time clone following Echo for the enemy team. It just makes the champion more readable. You understand exactly what's happening and how you can counteract it. So I think that's fine, actually. Riot was actually very, how do I say this, conservative with the changes they did, or the nerfs they made to Echo, and I think that's very good. With this kind of champion, you need to wait a little bit, give it a little bit more time. It isn't like what Ryze is at now, where he's just at a really ridiculous point where he's pick ban worthy every game, competitive, solo queue, just in general. I think they went overboard with that. They need to play conservative in like these types of scenarios and not overdo it. Right now, people are figuring him out, so I think they just need to give him time. Also, there was a slight nerf to his movement speed, but it won't affect him that much. So we'll see. These are the major changes, though. So Hecarim and his Warpath, which is his passive, the update cycle, it takes 0.25 seconds to update exactly how much AD you get from movement speed, as opposed to 1 second. So it's actually just like makes it clearer, makes it more responsive. Let's say you're at the end of your devastating charge, or E, it actually gives you the value, the damage value that you actually need to do this accurate amount of damage. So I think that's always good. Also, its devastating charge now stacks additively as opposed to multiplicatively. So the reason for this is because of his home guard buy with teleport. He would just be really hard to deal with. He would just teleport into lane, kill someone, or like do half of their health and damage with an E, and then ult, just kill the person. It was just really hard to deal with, and it was insane. So they made it additively, made that AD value he'll get from his passive slightly lower. I think overall this is fine. I think Hecarim won't be played as much anymore, to be honest. This seems like a small change, but the way it works with like Hecarim and why he's so strong in certain scenarios is because of like these plays he can make. Just in general, his late game tankiness. I don't know, a lot of things, but he's slightly getting nerfed and nerfed. His laning is slightly weaker. This makes his initiation weaker. So he's like really weak early game, but if you can get to the late game, he's really powerful. So that's why I don't think he's going to be played as much. He's still going to be played by like players who are really good at him, but I think he's going to be in a better spot now. So Jace, so this is the ones I was talking about, the changes to Jace, and it looks like a lot. You guys can see. Here, let me scroll down a bit. These are all the changes. Q to the skies and all the way to his ultimate. The thing you have to look at is Q, the values here, the values for lightning field. And let's see, I think there was one more. Yeah, those are the major ones. So everything else is very minor and doesn't really mean anything. So I'll show you guys. So at level 1 or rank 1 of Q to the skies, the hammer stance one, 10 extra damage, not a huge deal. Same value for cooldown, but as time goes on, it gets quite strong. So 230, extra 30 damage, but also the cooldown is really the important thing. Because you already built cooldown with Jace, this will be up quite often. So since this is at 6 seconds right now, it will be even lower than it was before, along with cooldown reduction. So I would guess maybe like around, depending on what you get, like a 30% cooldown will be around 4 seconds, a little bit more. So just keep that in mind. This will be quite powerful in hammer stance. I don't know if it will change his build path. I think like straight AD, like heavy AD will be still very strong, and the reason for that is because of Shock Blast and the way it scales up now. So let me clear this. I was just doing the math before. So with Shock Blast and Acceleration Gate, it increases the damage by 40%. So before it would go from 280 times 1.4 because it's 40%. It would do 392 damage base damage. There would be the AD ratio as well, so keep that in mind. But that's unchanged for this patch. So it's 392, and then we'll compare that to the value now. So 320 times, what is it, 1.4? So you get about, so it's 8 plus 48, so it'd be 56 damage overall. A fairly decent buff actually if you really think about it, just base damage wise. It takes a little longer to get to level 6 of this, since there are now 6 ranks of each ability. It's quite a bit stronger though once you get to it. So keep that in mind. His poke is going to be even stronger than it was before. Other changes are to the lightning field, slightly more damage, 20, not much because oftentimes you wouldn't get the full damage out of this, so it's not a huge deal, but again, a slight bit of a buff to it. The hyper is unchanged at all values. Well, I wouldn't say that, but there are slight changes to how it scales because of how there's 6 ranks of it now. But at level 1 and 5, it is the same. And the reason for this is because they want to be conservative. I think Riot, they don't want to overdo it and give him even more buffs. His Q is already quite strong. So Hyper is unchanged. His Thundering Blow, unchanged. It's actually slightly weaker early because of the level 15. Cooldown of 15 versus 14. Not a big change though in the large scheme of things. And again, 55% movement speed versus 50. Not a big change. So his R is no longer, you don't no longer have to put levels in it, is what I meant. So overall, a little stronger. It just takes a little bit more time to scale up to that strength. So I don't know exactly how it would work. Would it be level 10? I don't know exactly. But he'll have a higher peak to his strength when it comes to his Q damage. So that's mainly all I want to talk about. That's why I said it was simple. The other changes are very minuscule or not at all. Katarina got a nerf to his E, or to her E, sorry. Shunpo has lower base damage at level 1. You'll often keep this at level 1 throughout most of the game, so keep that in mind. 20 less damage through most of the game. Along with that, a nerf to the AP ratio. So, I don't really understand this one. I understand she can snowball very hard in a game. I don't really think this will change anything about the fact that she can snowball. This will just make her E simply mobility. I don't think it was needed. If she's gonna get a penta, this won't change you much, and really this is simply just a mobility spell now. The AP ratio is garbage. I don't usually use that word, but it is. And the base damage is really bad. So you won't use this for damage, simply mobility. I don't think it was needed though. Whenever I look at a change, I wonder, is this needed to make this champion more balanced? And this, no. If you're gonna nerf something on Katarina, you would nerf her ability to snowball, and that's why she's so strong in a team fight. She can snowball really hard because of her passive. They already nerfed her passive though. Now, I honestly think Katarina isn't that much of a problem. It's just the nature of solo queue and how chaotic it is, and that's why Katarina's stronger in solo queue compared to competitive and organized play. So I don't think this was needed, but whatever. I don't like Katarina, but I don't really think about these changes whether I like them or not. I just don't think it was needed. Just simple. Kha'Zix, taste their fear. His Q slightly buffed the isolation radius for the bonus damage, slightly lower. Makes his assassination potential better. He got a slight buff. I forget what it was too, but he got a slight buff last patch as well, or the patch before that. I think it was W, but so he's slightly stronger now. I think in solo queue he should be played more and more because of, like I said, the chaotic nature of it. And assassins are much more, I don't know, powerful in solo queue. But I think Kha'Zix is in an actually pretty good spot. Very much able to assassinate people. His Q is very strong now, just in general. I think Q, since you no longer put evolution points into your W early, you can put it into your Q and your E, and you can focus on that damage. I think he's quite powerful in solo queue. LeBlanc got quite a few changes. We'll just go through the changes real quick. So the first change is to distortion. The missile speed is reduced by 300, a fairly big percentage nerf to the movement speed, or the missile speed, sorry. And this will allow more counterplay, so you can see it coming or react a little quicker, so you can do damage to her while it happens. Was it needed? I think it was. I don't know if this was the change that was needed, but I think LeBlanc in general was just a little too powerful. We'll talk about why that is a little later after I talk about everything here. Ethereal Chains is slightly weaker because of the missile width has been reduced by 15. And I don't think this is the change that was needed. I think the next change was actually what was needed. Distance check checks to see if the target has broken the tether 4 times as fast. So the reason why LeBlanc is so frustrating in a lot of senses was because when she initiates or just goes on you in a 1v1 scenario especially, her ethereal chains would often still hit you and root you after you would flash away out of the tether range. And the reason for that is because of this. The tether range, or like how long it checks to see if you're out of range, just does not like calculate fast enough. I don't know why this was always around. Maybe just right thought it was fine, and even though I felt like it was wrong and like not how it should have been. Similar to how I think it was Nocturne's fear, his E used to be the same way. Like when you flashed away, it would still fear you, and it was very frustrating. So now that doesn't happen. I think this actually removes a lot of strength from her, especially with the width change and the change to the tether check. She's actually going to be not that strong in that kind of scenario. So I don't think all of this was needed at the same time, but we'll see. There was also a change to her. I guess this was a bug fix. I didn't know this would actually happen, but ethereal chains would fizzle on Morgana's black shield. So even though, let's say, the shield was broken, the CC portion of it would not apply, even though black shield was broken from, let's say, her Q or W. And I think that's a good bug fix. So overall, it's cleaning up her kit. Mimic distortion to stay consistent with her regular distortion has been reduced in missile speed. Also, the same changes to Mimic ethereal chains have been applied. And I don't know if these were the right changes, but I think one of the problems with LeBlanc, and has always been a problem in League, is that champions with mana costs or mana resources with abilities that don't cost mana. So one really big problem was Gragas W didn't have a mana cost, and mainly because he received health because of his passive when he used it. It allowed him to stay in lane like almost like forever. It was really annoying. Along with that, Echo's ultimate doesn't have a mana cost. Just in general, those are bad ideas for just like champions, like a champion design principle. It just allows you to do things that you shouldn't do. Like, I have the same feeling about Nidalee's like Cougar form. I feel like if they gave mana cost to Nidalee's Cougar form, she would be able, like, Riot can bounce her in other ways to make her stronger. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I don't think it's ever a good idea to give a champion that doesn't have that has a mana resource but not like a manaless ability. I think it's always a bad idea, but that's just me. So one change that I am actually very excited for is Malphite's W. It doesn't seem like a huge change, but the way he works as a champion, I think it will be quite nice for him. His Brutal Strikes W has been changed, so his passive portion of it just gives him percentage armor. Though it is slightly lower than the value that you had with the active portion of Brutal Strikes before, overall it's always active and you're always going to get that benefit from it. In my opinion, better overall. Okay, so the active portion now is the AoE cleave, so you don't have to push your lane if you don't want to. Before, it would just always cleave and it would push your lane if you ever put points into it. Now you get to choose whether to do that or not, and I think that's the right way to do it. Basic attacks deal an additional 25, 40, 55, 70, 85, plus 0.15 ability power ratio as physical damage to the target and nearby units. I don't fully understand why it's physical damage, especially since they removed the portion where it gives you extra, what was it, damage based on your attack damage. Like before, it used to give you extra armor and attack damage. It scaled with both. Now I don't understand why it's physical damage. We'll see. Maybe they thought it would be overpowered if it was magical damage, but it's a little odd. But this gives them a little better clearing overall. I think this is better for Malphite in lane, and overall just better damage-wise. I don't know, I would have to see the values. For AD Malphite, this is bad, obviously, but who cares? Because it's really just a trolley build. If you're thinking it seriously, Brutal Strikes is better now. Brutal Strikes now displays a visual effect that indicates the area of effect. Again, clarity, very good thing. Basic attacks while Brutal Strike is active now use Malphite's Critical Strike animation. Again, clarity. Just shows you exactly what's going on. I don't think that was needed since you already got this portion of it. But we'll see. It might look cool. Orianna got a change to how her ultimate works. And they were talking about in the description or like the explanation that this isn't a nerf. I don't know if you guys ever had this happen to you, where let's say you would get out of range from where your ball is and it would come back to you, like teleport to you, like how it should. Now it takes a little longer to ult. Like, so let's say you accidentally ulted and it appeared on top of you and you didn't know. It takes a little longer to ult, so it gives you a little bit more delay so you don't accidentally use your ultimate. So it isn't really a nerf in that sense. So like, let's say if you use a command protect on yourself or you just picked it up, it would still ult the same way. It wouldn't have that delay. It's only when you get out of range. So this is just like a small scenario. Not a huge difference though, let's be honest. Ryze, in my opinion, this is a champion that they shouldn't have been, Riot that is, shouldn't have been conservative with because of how ridiculous he actually showed himself to be in these extreme scenarios, and that's because of his passive. But they did change or fix a bug with Ryze where his W and E would not cost any mana if he used them on like minions or anyone that would be dying in the process of dying. So you would build stacks, but you wouldn't use any mana. So you would get up to that level of that 5-stack cap, and then you can just go insane and then kill your lane opponent, like you've seen many videos of. It's really insane in my opinion, and this is good that they changed the bug, but I think they should have, maybe they're a little worried, they don't know exactly what to do, but I think his passive change was the main thing that really sent him over the edge. The 6 seconds of using your ridiculous cooldown reduction on abilities just made him insane, in my opinion. I think he's still going to be strong even if they nerf that, but we'll see. This next change I'm really not going to talk about. This was in 5.10, but they didn't put it into effect. Don't know why this kind of stuff happens, but whatever. This is the same change as last time, just less damage on her active portion, so like the auto attack portion of her W. I think it's fine because the AoE portion of it is still very high in terms of percentage damage. So Sejuani had the most damage of tanks in my opinion before, and still a lot of utility and initiation. But now this tones it down a bit more. Along with the Cinder Hulk, I think tanks are all going to be kind of relegated to what they are supposed to do, which is utility, a bit of damage. They still are supposed to have damage, but they're not supposed to have like an insane amount of damage where they were better than damage-focused junglers. So I think that's good. They're putting Sejuani and other tanks in the right direction. Shen has been given some buffs that I think should have happened for some time, but we'll just talk about them really quick. So Shen didn't used to have, as a tank in my opinion, one of the kind of like icons of the game. Shen was one of the tanks, my first champion that I've ever played, and he didn't have magic resistance per level growth stat. He just had base magic resistance, and 32.1 is actually really weird for basic magic resistance. I've never seen that. But let's just take a look at the champions that do have percentage, or like growth per level in magic resist. Actually, so a lot of champions have 32.1 as the first value. Okay, that's interesting. But like you can see, all of these champions are melee champions. I don't see a single ranged champion among them. So you guys see, and then it finally stops right here. There's a few other melee champions, like I think Yasuo and I don't know, Poppy, don't have that scaling magic resist. But the thing is, like melee champions need that because they're always in the thick of the fight, and the AoE damage simply, like just like from like even supports, tanks have AoE magic damage that they're not meant to do like a ton of damage, but because of the fact that you don't have any extra magic resist, it made it tough for like someone like Shen to do what he's meant to do. So this actually is a huge difference. Along with the damage or the physical damage reduction of his E, he's going to be stronger overall defensively. Along with that, they made his key strike, his passive, come up more often at level 7 and 13. So increases damage slightly. The Shadow Dash has also been buffed. I think this is good. 100 is very high for every single point. So 80 is quite good. You often don't max this second, so this will be 100 at most of the game, unless you decide to actually max the second for more CC throughout the team fight, but most oftentimes you don't do that. So don't change him too much, but I think after the Cinderhulk nerfs, what I've been doing on Shen and what I think was viable was like Smite with Cinderhulk because of how he scales well with health, and the damage from Cinderhulk was quite high. Now that it's been nerfed slightly, or quite a lot in my opinion, I don't think that's as good. Shen isn't as good, but maybe he'll come back with this. I don't think this passive change is enough. It's only 2 seconds at level 13, let's be honest. That's not a big deal. This will probably be more of a difference though in the late game. So I think you'll be much stronger in the late game. We'll have to see, test them out, stuff like that. This is just theory crafting though. Another change is to Shyvana. Burnout now also applies 25% of Burnout's AoE damage to her basic attacks. So it just gives her more damage. Fixed a bug where Burnout had twice its bonus attack damage ratio only while in dragon form. Okay, so maybe it's to compensate for this, but overall, Shyvana will have a little bit more damage. She was really strong because of how she's a good like damage soak. That's what Shyvana was good for, and she had decent damage, but she didn't provide any utility. But the thing is, when she had like Cinderhulk and Skirmishers, she was really strong. But now that they nerfed both of those, Shyvana has not been seeing play at all. So they wanted to compensate and give her something back. I think this will actually be not bad. I want to see her in competitive play. I really don't like her playing against her, but I want to see more diversity. So I think this will actually bring her back slightly. If someone is looking for like just like a wall of meat and damage. So I think this will be quite powerful. Sivir has been slightly nerfed. So on the hunt, this is a very large explanation for it. I would read it yourself. I'm not going to read it because it'll just take too long. The initial movement speed duration of On the Hunt, so that really big burst in movement speed, has been toned down at later levels. So at level 11 and 16, or ranks 2 and 3, have been nerfed. So you'll still have the full duration. It'll just decay quicker. That's what this basically means, and I think it's fine because she was just basically always playing competitive because of how you can just ult and just like move as a whole death ball into the enemy team and kill them. It was very powerful and very easy. It's kind of annoying to deal with because you don't really need to do much. You just need to press R. So that's my opinion, at least. There's also been some changes. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. Okay, so Luden's Echo has been nerfed lately. This is again a long explanation. The reason they say they want to change it and nerf it was because of how it became the kind of standard AP item, and kind of pushed out other AP items like Death Cap, even though that is supposed to be like a late game item. The reason they say that Luden's is too strong is because the 0.15 AP ratio was too good even in the late game, and it would even multiply the late game damage of Death Cap, so it would be always like a must buy. But in my opinion, that wasn't true. It's just that I don't know. I don't think Luden's was that strong. It's just a little stronger than Death Cap when you proc the ability that you're trying to hit, and when you do proc Luden's with it. But otherwise, it wasn't very strong. If you look at actual damage values and actual values you get from abilities and Luden's proc, over time you actually get just as much damage, if not more, with Death Cap, almost with any champion. Now, they kind of nerfed the AP ratio. This doesn't mean much. I mean, this is already a really bad AP ratio. They nerfed it even more. I don't think Luden's was always that strong. I think what made it strong was that it gave movement speed as well. It gave that slight little bit of extra base damage. The 100 damage that it gives was also good. So I think it will still be good for now, for that reason. But with this change, Luden's Echo charge stacks at a rate of 10 versus 20. That's a huge change. That's going to take really long to actually stack up. This item is not going to be bought at all unless you have a lot of mobility. The stacking with mobility is better. So like Ahri might still use it, champions like that, but this is a huge nerf. Like champions that use abilities very quickly, like Ryze, Cassiopeia, this really hurts them. And I don't think this thing's going to be bought anymore. They kind of just like threw it in the dumpster with this change. I know people will still buy it for a little while, But I think over time they'll realize that it's not very strong. And it isn't. Let's just be honest. It wasn't that strong before. If you look at the damage values compared to Death Cap, even though Death Cap was, I think, 200 gold more, it just was better in almost every way. It scaled better with items that you bought after it. I think people just kind of got on the Luden's Echo D. I don't know how to say this, but they just got hyped up about the item more than I think they should have. If you look at the damage values, you'll see exactly what I mean. They also made sure this was consistent with Twisted Tree Line and Dominion. So yeah, I don't think this will be bought very often anymore. This is a huge nerf, huge. This will only be decent on mobility-based champions. High, I don't know how to say this, but very low cooldown ability champions like Rise and Cassiopeia. Champions like that, it won't be as strong on anymore. I just don't think it's a worthwhile buy anymore. That's my opinion though. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. All these other changes are for Twisted Tree Line, Dominion, other kind of stuff that I'm not really interested in. I think a majority of players aren't. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go over them though. But yeah, besides that, that's all guys. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.